Welcome to the fourth week of Standard Bank's Phenomenal Families series. I'm Lara Tumbele, your host, and today I'll be joined by some exciting speakers to continue last week's discussion on the latest global trends and insights impacting family office and family enterprises. To start us off, we welcome our first speaker, Henry Faun from Knight Frank. He'll be sharing his insights on the latest global real estate trends. Henry is a partner and heads up the private office team at Knight Frank in the Middle East. He's based in Dubai. Now, having worked with Knight Frank for the past 9 years, both in London and in the Gulf, Henry is a specialist in advising clients on the purchase, sale and management of UK, EU and US real estate. Given Henry's position within the private office, he is unrestricted by a specific market or geography and is able to provide specialized services across a whole host of Knight Frank service lines to make sure the right assets and opportunities are offered to clients. So thank you so much for joining us. How has the pandemic impacted the residential property market? Let's start off in London, for instance.
Over the past year or so, we've seen a number of different changes affecting the London property market whilst the pandemic has been ongoing. Initially, the first lockdown made it very tricky for any transactions to take place at all. Naturally, there were no property viewings. We couldn't go to our clients' homes to show them. And perhaps even, for example, offices were closed. So even our clients couldn't even travel in to the working in their normal commuting patterns. This affected their real estate across the board. What we saw after that was in the UK, the real estate and construction, importantly as well, were both two protected sectors by the UK government. So in the subsequent lockdowns that we saw throughout the rest of the year, actually we found that transacting on property, perhaps that's our clients looking to rent a new home or buy a new home, remained protected. Now, Knight Frank, with the necessary safety precautions that we had in place, were able to continue reviewing our clients' properties and potentially showing them for prospective tenants and buyers to potentially who could move in on them. Now, supporting that, all movement companies, even down to plumbers and electricians, which would support the movements of these clients into different properties, were protected as well. So it made it very easy later on. Now, that ensured that after the first lockdown, we saw a mini boom in the UK, and that was whereby our clients found that perhaps their current home and their current environment wasn't suitable for them for the remainder of the year and potentially future lockdowns. And we saw, and this was a global trend, we should highlight, that actually clients moved from what was smaller apartments perhaps into larger apartments, maybe with outside space, with a balcony or terrace, or even they sought something even bigger, which was looking for a house. Now, specifically in London, we saw a large run on both rentals and sales in the housing markets on the outskirts of London. So perhaps if they could afford an apartment in the very centre, for the same price and budget, you could move to the outside areas and afford a very large house with a private garden and enjoy some outside space as well. That was a trend we have seen globally.
Fantastic. Okay. Just give us the specificities of how the market has fared in Dubai over the same time frame.
Over that same sort of time frame, we saw the initial lockdown in Dubai, again, where volumes of transactions came down significantly. Now, after that, Dubai has actually remained open. We didn't have a cyclical period of different lockdowns as we have seen in Europe and the rest of the world. What we've seen from that is that actually many clients internationally, now this is where it differs from London and perhaps many other global cities, international clients, mostly from Europe, found that when the European lockdowns kicked into place, they could actually perhaps relocate themselves to Dubai with their family and maybe even put their children into local schools there, buy a new home, perhaps set up a small branch of their business in Dubai. And the property market really benefited off the back of that. And we found that the higher end villas, so in areas that are well established, perhaps not under construction now, but were built 5, 10, 15 years ago, in setup markets where there are normal transacting processes that go on, actually rocketed in prices as well. And we found that premiums were being paid again and again. And I can say that, for example, if we took a case study on the Palm Jumeirah in Dubai, the island chain that does look like a palm tree, there is a limited number of villas on there, perhaps 1,500 or so. And actually, we found that prices on there in the past 12 months, our team have reported transactional like for like, some villas have increased between 30 and perhaps even 50% up on their prices, which shows you the phenomenal amount of demand that has come in. That is not something that we've seen across all markets in Dubai, though, it should be noted. And we can see that actually in other areas that are under construction, there's still a lot of supply to be considered. So I would say that some areas have gone up in values and some have remained very steady over the past year. So quite a bit different from London.
All right, so I'd like you to cast your eye a little bit forward, and we're sort of in a world that's moving towards high vaccinations, perhaps herd immunity. So what do you foresee in some of these markets for the coming years, hopefully post-pandemic?
Well, perhaps if we start with the UK, we've seen over the past 5 years or so, since the EU referendum where the UK chose to remove ourselves from the EU, we've actually seen a cooling in prices over that time frame. And we've seen that actually when the pandemic came in, there was not a lot of inflated prices in the London market at all. So since then, given the onset of the pandemic, we actually forecast now a good run for the coming 4 or 5 years, perhaps even longer. For this year, for example, we forecast a growth of just 2% in London. But going ahead for the next 4 to 5 years, it's between 5 and 7% growth annually. So perhaps our clients that have been holding off for some time, maybe the last couple of years due to the pandemic or otherwise, this could be an interesting opportunity there. Now, in Dubai, if we take that as our second case study here, looking at it, well, if prices have increased between 30 and 50% over the past year or so, that perhaps is not something that will continue. No markets continue to go up on a trajectory like that. So perhaps those particular markets that have already jumped in prices, they may remain steady for now, and perhaps other areas may catch up in the fullness of time. It's good to note that in Dubai, we do have the Expo 2020, which has now moved to 2021. That will be kicking off in October next month. So perhaps that may add some added buoyancy to the markets.
Okay, we'll be looking to see. Now, what are your African and Middle Eastern clients looking for in these international markets?
My African and Middle Eastern clients that we advise on their international portfolios, many of them whole portfolios across Europe, across, of course, Africa and the Middle East, but also in the US. And we've seen a continuing trend for them looking to diversify their wealth and not be pocketed into one particular market. We found that our clients are still seeking perhaps to follow trends of education. For example, if a client has several children, they want to be educated overseas, maybe in Switzerland, maybe in UK or even in the US to go into the education systems there. We find that their real estate purchases tend to, generally speaking, follow some of those trends. So, for example, if a client from Lagos, for example, recently wanted to send his children to a school in Los Angeles, we assisted him with a purchase of a home over there so he could move his family there for that time frame. And again, from the Middle East, if a client wanted to perhaps look at education in London, then we can assist with a rental or purchase on there. And that's generally where our clients have been. On the other side of that, we have seen clients that are still looking for pure investment, which is yielding rental returns. Now, this may not be in the center of some of those most well-established cities, the Londons, the Parises, or New York, but it might even be a little bit further out where there's a slightly more attractive yield and we can get a bit more revenue for the investment opportunity.
For those clients who are investment focused primarily, could you give us a sense of how their portfolios have performed and how they've been affected by the pandemic?
Of course. Those clients that are investment focused primarily means probably they have exposure to commercial real estate opportunities as opposed to too much residential, as commercial may offer higher yields and a longer term income on these assets. Now, we've seen that clients will have been affected. As we all know here, perhaps we've not been full time over the past year or two. So we will be considering, do we need that much office space going ahead? And therefore, if you're a commercial property investor, how good is your office investment looking ahead? So you need to be considering that. Also, many of our clients across both Africa and the Middle East have exposure to the hospitality markets. So they may own a hotel or even a portfolio of hotels. Now, we need to consider also how have they been performing over the past couple of years. And my bet is perhaps they've been underperforming for some time. That may well come back as travel increases and we're going into hopefully a vaccinated world where these things can come back to a new norm. But again, we're yet to see. So our clients' portfolios that do have exposure to those two markets have perhaps had a slower year or two. Now, if we look at it on the other side, whilst we all have been working from home, And adapting to that, we've been making the most of e-commerce. We've been buying food and goods online throughout that time. That means that companies that perhaps needed to distribute those items maybe didn't need their retail shops anymore, but needed a larger distribution center. So perhaps they can sell their goods online and keep a larger stock for that. So we've seen a strong demand for new tenants wanting to lease new distribution centers, so industrial sized sheds, so to speak, and also those clients that want to buy them in the hope that we can lease them again to other clients in the future at a higher yield. So there's good opportunities on the commercial investment side as well.
A mixed bag indeed. For those with some negative exposure, do your clients ask for debt on their international property portfolios?
Debt is a key discussion for all of our clients across all of their portfolios, even whether it's positive or negative, I would say. And that's also both true on both the residential side of their property portfolios, so their investment homes or their second homes abroad, or even their commercial investments as well. Debt is key importance because if it's a commercial investment, perhaps you want to drive up your potential yield, and debt can certainly assist with that, looking at the overall returns. Also in some markets, for example, the UK, many of our clients take tax advice in the UK, which can often lead them to wanting to take debt on their UK residential properties, as longer term it may be a little more tax efficient from their advisor. So there are a few opportunities out there, but generally speaking, debt is highly welcomed in real estate portfolios for maximizing those returns.
Thank you so much to Henry Faun for sharing your perspective on global real estate trends.